on peace, security, and human development, especially for the Asia-Pacific area. Our principal speakers today are Ambassador Yuichi Yamaguchi, former ambassador of Japan to Turkey and Myanmar. Since retiring from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he has been a lecturer on Asian history of Asia. Dr. Mingjung Zhang of the People's Republic of China is a scientist who is president of the largest anti-climate change organization in the world. And to his right is a member of the cabinet of the government of Nepal, the Honorable Eknath Dakal, Minister of Cooperatives and Poverty Alleviation. And to the ambassador's left is David Clark, the Honorable David Clark, Member of Parliament of Australia, New South Wales. And to his left, from New Zealand, representing the Conservative Party, and a party leader of this party is Colin Craig. Dr. Walsh, Dr. Taj, the presidents and prime ministers who are with us today, the first ladies, the speakers of parliament, leaders of civil society, my friends. Asia is the home of and the cradle of the great civilizations, cradle of the great religions, cradle of the great cultures of history. And today, many are saying that the fulcrum of political and economic power is moving inexorably to the east. And here in Asia today, you have not only rising China, but a China that has risen. And you have India, the largest democracy on earth, almost the same population size as People's Republic of China of 1.3 billion. Also beginning to emerge as an important economic power. Of course, Japan still remains the third largest economic power in the world. There has been some decline in Japan's economy, but it is beginning to pick up again. And ASEAN, the fraternity of 10 Southeast Asian nations, almost all are becoming economic tigers, of course, with the exception so far, because they are still at the tail end, of Laos and Myanmar. But Myanmar, with its opening to the world, is going to rapidly rise in the next few years, and with its adoption of a pluralistic democracy. And Central Asia, composed of Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and all the great towns with their huge natural resources, also emerging as a major economic bloc in the region, and especially with the support that they are enjoying as a result of huge Chinese investments in Central Asia. Of course, Russia remains as a great power, occupying more than 60% of the Asian landmass. Russia's 60% of its landmass is in Asia. And of course, in West Asia, the entire Arab world is going through some difficulties with the emergence of the Arab Spring, the crisis in Syria, crisis in Bahrain, the crisis in Yemen, the crisis in Libya, which is of course already North Africa, and the continuing problems in Egypt. So from Tokyo to Turkey, there are advances and there are also great difficulties and problems. Problem of Palestine remains a serious problem for the Asian continent. Problem of Iraq remains a serious challenge for America, for NATO, for the nations of the Asian continent. Iraq, with the departure of American troops, still trying with great difficulty to put together a government of national unity, and continuing problems between Sunnis and Shiites. There are two factions of Islam. In Nepal, represented here by our dear friend Eknath, Minister Eknath, our International Conference of Asian Political Parties has worked with their party and with their government, together with the Universal Peace Federation. And to a certain extent, we have made some success because more than 10,000 weapons have been turned over from the Maoist guerrilla party and turned over to the Nepalese armed forces. But again, the government of national unity still eludes them, and their new constitution has not yet been adopted. We have also invited here, for the first time, a scientist, perhaps the strongest apostle in the battle against climate change and for ecological safety, Dr. Zhang, because when we speak of peace and security and human development in Asia and in the world, it's not only the nuclear threat, it's not only the threat of extremism, it's not only the threat of poverty, which bedevils our peoples in Asia and peoples around the world, but now this single most serious threat, and it's a recurrent threat, and it's a continuing threat, and it's an enduring threat, is the threat of climate change. That is why we have invited Dr. Zhang, whose organization, the International Ecological Safety Cooperative Organization, which has been awarded consultative status by the United Nations Economic and Social Council. We have asked him to speak on this issue of climate change. There is a continuing problem in Northeast Asia between Japan and China on the Senkaku Straits, which the Chinese call the Diaoyu Straits. There's a problem between Japan and South Korea on the waters between the two of them, which during the time of Sigmund Rhee, we used to refer to it as the Rhee Line, in the Sea of Japan, or what Korea calls the East Sea. In the South China Sea, there is the continuing conflict over maritime territories between China and Vietnam on the Paracels, and disagreement and conflict between the Philippines and China on the Spratlys and on the Scarborough Reef, and conflict as well with Taiwan, which claims part of the Spratlys in the South China Sea. Conflict as well with Brunei and Malaysia, which claim part of the Spratlys. One of the things that we have been saying over the last few years is that perhaps they should follow the geopolitical settlement in the North Sea among the European powers, where when I visited in the North Sea a few years ago, the oil goes to Teesside in England on one side, the oil goes to Stavanger in Norway on one side, and the natural gas goes to Bremen in the north. It's a very practical settlement. Even Prime Minister Sanana Gusmao, who represents East Timor, who's here, they have worked out a practical settlement to divide their oil profits in the waters between Darwin and Australia and tiny East Timor. And today, East Timor is earning about $3 to $4 billion a year as a result of its participation in the development of oil and gas in the waters between Australia and East Timor. There are continuing problems between Christians and Muslims in Mindanao, in my own country. But I'm happy to report to you that President Aquino has just signed a framework agreement with the Muslim Islamic Liberation Front, which now promises, after almost 40 years of conflict, to finally bring about a settled peace in Mindanao. But this is 90% done, but it's not yet complete. In Indonesia, Christians and Muslims have worked out under our friend Yusuf Kala, who's running for president of Indonesia. And now finally, they brought about a settlement between Christians and Muslims in Aceh, in Indonesia. In East Timor, our friend Sanana Gusmao, in spite of the massacres by the Indonesian troops as they fought their war of independence, now they have worked out an incredible bilateral settlement between them. And I always refer to them as the peace model in Asia, the East Timor Indonesian settlement, which I commend to the Universal Peace Federation and its constant campaign to bring about peace along the crusade that has been launched in this country by our Reverend Moon and Dr. Waltz and Dr. Taj. I am happy to report to you that as a result of the meeting this morning, the African leaders who were gathered here have endorsed our proposal for the African political parties to organize a regional organization for their political parties, for their ruling and opposition parties. We in Asia, we have formed the International Conference of Asian Political Parties, more than 300 ruling and opposition parties. And this has been very successful over the last 10 years, and we have succeeded in forging an alliance with the political parties of Latin America and the Caribbean. Thanks to Dr. Taj and Dr. Walsh of the Universal Peace Federation and the African leaders who just gathered here a few hours ago. They supported by acclamation the need for the creation of a regional organization for Africa so that we can create a tricontinental alliance between Asia, Latin America, and Africa. This is all part of the crusade for peace to bring about peace and harmony among these three great continents of the world. I would like to say that in Asia, the emerging competition and conflict is between China and the United States. So they speak of an American pivot from the Middle East to the Pacific. They speak, or some speak of encirclement, of containment of China. And the nations of Asia are being made to choose between the United States of America and China. But to me, the joint communique issued by Hu Jintao, the president of China, and President Obama last year, should be the commanding principle. The two of them said that they recognize China as an emerging major political, economic, and military power which has much to contribute to the Pacific region. And they also acknowledge in the joint communique that the United States, for dozens and dozens of years, have made a great contribution and continues to contribute to peace and security and development in the Pacific region. I think that should be the foreign policy that we should adopt in encouraging both to work out a settlement among them. And of course, the overriding principle is that neither one is the enemy. I think the common enemy for all of us is poverty. And both have agreed that we should concentrate in the war on poverty and on the war of climate change. And it has been said that there are no poor nations in the world, only poorly managed nations.